Father Lynch, are you saying that your association with gays, rather than your being a gay priest, is what this is all about?
That question is loaded with a very prejudice, bigotry, and judgmentalism for which I am suffering in my family and religious community.
On April 18, 1989, at the Bronx Supreme Court of New York, an Irish Catholic priest went on trial. Father Bernard Lynch had been charged with sexually abusing a 14-year-old boy 4 years earlier. The adolescent, John Schaefer, said he'd visited Father Lynch's apartment. Assistant District Attorney Sean Walsh outlined in court what was alleged to have happened next.
He made moves on John Schaefer. He got on top of John Schaefer and reached down onto his clothing. He touched his genitalia. He took John Schaefer's hand while he was on top of him on the floor and placed John Schaefer's hands inside of his pants, which was a sweatsuit that Father Lynch was wearing.
It was a tawdry, sordid little case, but it drew a lot of publicity because of the character, profile and reputation of the man accused. Father Lynch was famous, some would say infamous, in New York for his work with people with AIDS and his well-publicized stands in favor of gay rights, in direct opposition to the Catholic Archbishop of New York. To some, he was a menace who had to be stopped. To others, he was little short of a messiah.
He is a man of prayer. He's a man of the gospel. If Jesus were walking the earth today, he would be very much like Bernard Lynch.
In terms of Catholic priests, he's one of the more open people. He's one of the, I guess he would be considered one of the more radical people. But if you listen closely to what he's saying, he's preaching a message of love and forgiveness and embrace of all the brothers and sisters in the church. I mean, it's a pretty gospel line.
I've been aware of Father Lynch's work through Dignity and with the gay and lesbian community, especially with people with AIDS, and I have had tremendous admiration for him. I think he's all priest.
He's bright, he's witty, he generally listens to people when they speak, and is a supporting, loving person. I think, having been on several retreats with him, that as a theologian he's absolutely first rate.
There's a holiness and a wholesomeness to him, to his prayer, to his ability to gather people together, to bring them to an experience of God.
Naturally, there was the kind of sensationalist quality of a Catholic priest on a public morals charge against a minor. But beyond that, this occurred at a time when the Bronx DA's office, which was prosecuting the case, were under investigation themselves, and some of their decisions and some of their practices had come under scrutiny and were found wanting. So there was that question hanging over. And then, of course, the controversial background of the priest himself, Father Lynch.
The Irish-born priest was a high-profile campaigner at a time when AIDS was ravaging New York's homosexual community. Father Lynch founded an AIDS ministry in the city, and he worked with Dignity, an organization of gay and lesbian Catholics, which finally ran foul of church authorities and was expelled from church property. Father Lynch's harrowing work with people with AIDS was the subject of a Channel 4 documentary in 1987.
You know, I've said if I could just take the Pope by the hand for one day and bring him around to just listen and see what's going on here, I believe he would be converted to the Christ that is present in our midst. AIDS will convert the church. The church will be judged on AIDS.
The church in New York had already judged what to do with Father Lynch. Under pressure from the Archdiocese, his religious order brought him back to Ireland in August 1987 and then sent him to Rome on sabbatical leave. That same summer in New York, FBI investigators had moved into this private boys' school in the Bronx to investigate allegations of child sex abuse. Father Lynch had been the chaplain, but had resigned from the school 2.5 years before the investigation began. Mount St. Michael's Academy is owned and operated by the Catholic Marist brothers. It was a highly respected private college with a very good track record in academic achievement. In more recent years, however, the school has had to deal with all of the problems of a run-down mixed-race area with a progressively poorer population. Father Lynch joined as chaplain in 1976 and left 8 years later in 1984. He had run what was regarded by church authorities as a model campus ministry.
You could always go to Father Lynch and he'd offer you his advice. He'd never turn the door away on you. And he was just a gentleman to everybody. He treated everybody the same.
I stand as Bernard Lynch for the co-equality of every human being. In very simple language, that's what my Christianity means to me.
The case against Father Lynch cost the New York taxpayers an estimated $500,000 to investigate and bring to court. A week into the non-jury trial, the case spectacularly collapsed because John Schaefer would no longer testify against his former confessor. Father Lynch was exonerated. The judge himself said it was not the district attorney's finest hour.
I'm going to give you enough rope to hang. And this court is not going to stand up here now and summarily dismiss the case. But I will see the witness, and then I'm going to let you have what you wish with the way of an adjournment, and you will have your redirect, and by God, you will have your redirect if it takes 2 weeks.
The prosecutor moved for dismissal rather than let him finish testimony.
It's an outrage. We don't want a dismissal on a technicality.
Then the judge allowed the dismissal, but also went further and ruled on the merits.
And upon hearing all of the evidence in this case, and evaluating all the evidence in this matter, this court has a reasonable doubt and finds the defendant, Father Lynch, not guilty of the crimes.
It was all over, but the questions had only just begun.
When I saw the flimsiness of the case and how it was presented, and then you look for a rationale, then why did they push this case with such a weak witness and such little evidence? Even the kid himself said he was coerced into testifying prior to even going to court. So who was pushing it, and why would they push something that was so shaky to begin with? Was it a case of bringing a charge that they felt would never go to court and would accomplish their goals?
It seems to me that the only explanation one can find for why bringing a case such as this against a priest cannot be found in terms of the law. One has to look elsewhere. And if one does look elsewhere, one sees Father Lynch as a very active political man, particularly here in New York City. He, because of his ministry to the AIDS victims and because of his championing of the causes of homosexual men and women in New York City, he became somewhat of a pariah in the church. Indeed, we know that the church sought through a variety of means within the church itself to have Father Lynch taken out of New York and returned to Ireland or returned to Africa, where he would cause less mischief to the diocese here.
What did happen here was a conjoining of essentially 3 related but independent interests. First, I believe that high-level archdiocesan officials were very troubled by Father Lynch's effectiveness, his visibility, and his basic human face. That was troubling to the archdiocese. Secondly, we had an unusual situation of a insecure and I dare say incompetent temporary district attorney. He had a political desire to exploit this case through the publicity. The third, and perhaps most important reason underlying this prosecution is that unfortunately we live in a society which is highly homophobic. There's a general fear of people who are lesbian women or gay men, and that's a very unfortunate thing, and I have no doubt that this was a major reason for the prosecution.
Well, I was told, coming off the Phil Donahue show several years ago, by a certain gentleman that I do not wish to name, that they would find a boy who would bring these kind of charges against me.
The earliest hints of trouble came when one of the teachers at the school where Father Lynch ran the campus ministry died of AIDS in 1984. The teacher was a close personal friend of Father Lynch's. The teacher's brother, a Catholic priest from Florida, was very angry and upset about the cause of death and the fact that his brother was gay.
This highly disturbed priest, whose loving brother, my personal friend, a wonderful human being, died of AIDS, and the brother could not accept it and literally flipped out and came up to Mount St. Michael's Academy suggesting on a public placard outside the school for all to see what in fact came to pass in the indictment. Father Lynch, pervert, do you want him near your sons? It was an invitation to go after me before this priest came to Mount St. Michael's Academy. I was Father Cool on campus, known by some of the faculty and some of the students for my work with dignity. But it was not an issue.
It very quickly became an issue at the school. Opposition to Father Lynch was led by three teachers, Joe Pagnosi, Albert Papiti, and Frank Hughes.
They came to me, and Frank Hughes and a teacher by the name of Jim Harrington, as his witness, came and tried to talk me into resigning. And I kept, for what reason? But they were coming from, well, even if he's not gay, the fact that he associates with them means that he's a child molester. So we can't have him near the boys.
Around the same time, an organisation called SAFE sprang up at the school.
SAFE is an acronym for Students Against Faggots in Education. It's I'm hoping it's no longer in existence, but it certainly was then, a group of students, a small group of students, encouraged by certain members of the faculty whose job was to rid Mount St. Michael of faculty they suspected to be gay.
Larry Lydon himself was targeted and harassed by SAFE and left the school as a direct result.
There's no question that SAFE was active in this prosecution because I saw when I was in Assistant District Attorney Walsh's office, on the table behind his desk was a file folder with the word SAFE written on it. And he turned it over so I wouldn't see it, but I did see the name of it. Of course, I didn't look inside the file.
Father Lynch had the support of the vast majority of teachers. There hadn't been a single complaint from a parent or a student. He did not, however, enjoy the support of the school principal, Paul Denault.
So eventually, with the aid of SAFE, I was forced to give my resignation, which I did in the Christmas of '84.
Problems at the Mount continued after Father Lynch left. The principal, Mr. Denault, died of AIDS. The three teachers instrumental in forcing Father Lynch's resignation, Frank Hughes, Albert Papiti and Joe Pagnosi, were now focusing their attention on the new school principal, Brother Timothy Brady, and on some of the Marist brothers at the school. The teachers claimed that students were being sexually abused by teachers and counsellors. Brother Brady was later charged with sex abuse and exonerated. Their animosity towards